Folks, there's no other way but to be all in. Either he's Lord of all or he is not Lord at all. And you can experience the real and authentic, true life change that only God can provide to humanity. See, when we truly encounter Jesus and purpose to know him and follow his teachings, hashtag life change will occur.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walking to the cashier, order up a root beer and a number one. Cover it with green stuff, one scoop is not enough. Find a booth is real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Looking for some exhilarating fun? It's at All Out Zone. All Out Zone showcases Nerf dart tag games from team elimination battles to human versus zombies, pitting two teams against each other in fun, organized chaos with trained referees, music, and a full arsenal of Nerf blasters. You need team parties, birthday parties. We can customize the party to fit your needs. Visit us at the Coronado Mall. Give us a call, 505-444-6964. All Out Zone.
Sports Desk is proudly presented by Car Crafters. It's like it never happened.
And welcome everybody here to the Sports Desk. I'm Scott Galletti, along with Ed Nunez. Alden Ioane is our director, and we're going to be telling you all about the brackets, everything going on in high school football. We're also going to go over some volleyball as well and recap what happened over the weekend in boys and girls soccer. It was a busy week last week, getting even busier. And Ed, we bring you in, and I'll tell you what, we're going to talk in depth about the high school here coming up shortly, but what a week last week, and the selection seeding shows are over, and now it's down to playoff action.
It went that quick and went that fast, and you know, I thought everybody on the show, and it's great to have Coach Bramante on with us too. He's quite a character. He really is.
Yeah.
Some of the comments he made, you know, they're on Saturday were funny. I couldn't laugh out loud because I didn't want to interrupt the taping, but I thought everybody was really, you know what, and again, I think Adam gave a shout out to the best directors and producers in the business, Alden Ioane, Jay Pohl, and Josh Brown. They did a great job, and people don't understand what they do behind the scenes. They're the best team that we work with, and they're a great bunch of guys. So I thought that, you know, I can't believe, you and I talk about it all the time, and how fast this season has gone. You know, I concluded with Berlin and Las Lunas. I know we'll talk about that later. What a game, what an atmosphere. It's too bad someone had to lose that game.
Right.
You and I talked about it, and you know, we'll talk about this more, I'm sure, but Berlin converting on 4th and 23. 4th and 23, they convert.
When you told me about that, that was amazing.
Yeah, they went to the, you know, we'll talk about it later. I have to tell you about the whole play because I couldn't believe it. Me and Roger Holian and I should say, couldn't believe it. But I think, you know, and you know, we're looking at Monzano, we're looking at Berlin. I'm going to have the honor of doing the 4A. So, you know, I'm looking at Las Vegas Robertson, St. Mike's, Portales, who's a sleeper in there. You know, so Moriarty, they've kind of trended downward as the season ended. So many things to think about. And here it is, football, the leaves are about falling. It's so warm that they're not falling. You know, but they're changing colors.
Colors, yeah.
And there's some, gosh, you should have seen the trees in Las Lunas. Just gorgeous. So beautiful afternoon for a game. You couldn't, hardly any wind. You know, both stands, and you always ask this, was there a good crowd there? It was packed. Mm-hmm. And just, you know, again, that's a regional rivalry that if you lose, you have to see these guys, oh man, you seem like, oh. But the good thing that I saw, that Roger and I saw, they were hitting each other and they were bringing it, but they help each other up, pat each other on the helmet. There wasn't a lot of chesting up. It was really good sportsmanship and real good character out there.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Well, let's switch gears before we get back to the high school scene. We'll talk a little bit about the University of New Mexico. What the heck's going on there, Ed, as they lose 24-10 to a team, again, that they were favored to?
You look at the stats, the final stats, they dominated time of possession. They dominated the game statistically. Unfortunately, statistics don't win games. They have 15 turnovers in 2 games, I believe, or it might be 14. So they keep turning the ball over. And one of the biggest offenders, and I hate to say this, has been Richard McCorley. Richard McCorley has run for some good yards between the tackles, but he's had a hard time holding on to the football. Ramel Jordan, Tyrone Owens. The thing that's missing, and I looked at the paper, and you and I talked about this too, they're missing those explosive plays. We had talked about that Jarrell Presley and Terrion Gibson had provided. Terrion Gibson averaged, 9.1 yards a carry last year? Yes, as a committee, they're good backs, but they get those, boom, explosive plays that they were used to, and they don't have that explosiveness in the backfield. The passing, they wanted to tie that around the running game, and hopefully they'd be consistent with both. The passing has been a mixed bag of results, mostly bad. I'd have to say, if I'm the coach watching the film, I'd have to say that the passing has not worked the way we thought. We didn't want to, you always say this, you're a big advocate and you're not wrong. We're a run-first team that passes once in a while, and some games they've had to pass first, and what's happened? So I just think all of a sudden they're teetering, kind of a seesaw, and boom, it all just went south. And it's too bad because I watched, that's my team no matter what. And I think the season, again, this was supposed to be the best roster from top to bottom that Coach Davey had.
See, some people say that,
right,
and some people say, oh, this was a rebuilding year, oh, it's a down year, it's okay, but you're right. I've heard more, this was a season that was supposed to be the most loaded talent-wise since Bob Davey got here. They started off like that. Everyone was talking, oh, this is 7, 8, maybe even 9-win team, and now they might be lucky to win 4.
The thing is, though, somewhere along the line, and I'm thinking maybe after the Colorado State tough loss and they lost their swag, they lost their mojo. You can tell, because again, they're not finishing plays, they're fumbling, the mental concentration doesn't seem to be there to finish and win games.
Well, this was a team that was built on enthusiasm and building on positive plays, and you're right. Now all of a sudden, those plays aren't there.
And they used to be a staple of the UNM triple option, it's a staple. You get 3, the dive gave you 3, the pitch gave you 4, and then bam, 20 up the middle. First down, move the chains. Look at the stats. If you think we're lying, go look at the stats where they rank as far as rushing. Where were they the last couple of years? Where are they now? And that'll tell you the story that why they have the wins, amount of wins that they do.
Well, they were kind of getting at the other day against Utah State, but it was to be expected that they were going to move the ball on Utah State. Probably not the best Utah State defense that they've had the last few years, but their offense is a little better, and they scored some points, did Utah State. But the Lobos had the ball 1st and 10 at the Utah State 20, fumbled the ball, 70-yard fumble return for a touchdown. That's the kind of game it was, because they were moving the ball, and even when they were, something happened.
David Halberstrom wrote a book many, many years ago. You might have read it, The Breaks of the Game. It's about Portland Trail Blazers. This is 1977, 1978. I read that book 3 or 4 times. The breaks of the game. Sometimes they break for you, and in the case that you just described, you're driving and you fumble, and it's gone back the other way. That's it's a 14-point swing. And good teams can overcome that, teams that have confidence in themselves, but this team has lost its mojo, man. And you know what? Again, that's still my team. I still support them 100%, but think about what we've seen here. The other thing is this. There's rumors just swirling just a little bit, not a gust yet, maybe more around the program that does Coach Davey retire and cash him? I hope not. I hope not. You know what?
Because a lot of people hope not.
People are so anxious that, you hear this, not from you, because you know the game. People that know you that have been there, they know what this guy has done here. People are so anxious, let's get rid of him and get this. Get who?
And lose, exactly. Get who? If you have to start all over, it'll be as bad, if not worse, than it is right now. I mean, we were talking with Bob Brown yesterday on his show that, is this a one-year thing, or is this something that has pushed the program back to where it was? Did they lose all of their momentum that they were before? You know, a positive team with 7 and 9 wins, and now they're on the cusp of maybe only winning 3 this year. Because I'll tell you what, UNLV is a losable game, and the other 2 games are going to be hard to win.
Well, Texas A&M, does anybody really think the Lobos, I say I'm alumni, I don't play on the team, but have a good chance to go to College Station and beat them? Probably not. And just the way things are going, sometimes when teams have collapses like that, they turn the ball over constantly, and they have those things happen, breaks of the game. All of a sudden, the guys go to practice and they don't have that same confidence.
Yeah.
And you've seen it. You've seen it a million times.
I've seen it a bunch of times, yeah.
So when that happens, you have to wonder for the last couple of games, and that's a great question. I'm sorry I didn't listen yesterday. Bob and I talked last week for a little bit, and I would have loved to have chimed in on that, because I hope not that it's just a one-season aberration and the Lobos don't go back to Loxley and Shepard and, losing season after losing season, and no, we get one guy in.
The consensus was it isn't that bad, because at least, I was there during the Loxley seasons. Those games, none of them were, even the games that they won weren't winnable. And they pulled out, an opponent drops a fumble, they score a game winner, and they end up winning a game that they shouldn't have won. That isn't the case nowadays. I mean, you look at the last 3 games that they've lost, 2 road games and 1 home game, they were favored in all of them. And 2 of them they were blown out 80-3.
That's concerning. That really is. Now, Fresno State's much better than anybody
Now, back
thought.
in those days, they weren't favored for anything.
No, you're right. You're right. So
in fact, they were more 21 to 28-point underdogs every game.
Every game.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not as bad as
now. Here's the scary thing, though. I'm looking at, we were going over this. The line was as high as 19 for this week's game at A&M. I'm thinking that's low, because Wyoming beat them 42-3. Fresno State beat them 38-0. I guarantee you, if those 2 teams played at A&M, they'd lose by 21 points.
You know what? You make a point there. 19 does seem, maybe.
Because, those teams are not nearly. A&M might be down this year, but they only lost to Alabama by less than 10 points.
Alabama.
Yeah, Alabama.
Yeah.
So
maybe it is.
I think the matchup might not be too
19.
kind on the Lobos. And
Well, it's a money game.
Ed.
Right.
It's all about matchups. You bring that up. I almost forgot. Yes, it's a money game. Did you realize that this is a rare money game because of the last 2 road games that A&M has to play? This is their shot to secure 6 wins to get bowl eligible.
Interesting.
So a money game, which would normally be played at the beginning of the year, that's their bowl eligibility game. So, and let's face it, UNM comes to town and it's a close game, people are going to be calling for that coach's head.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're going to want to send a statement, and probably more than a 19-point statement.
Not to say that the Lobos can't win, but
hard.
Chances are not going to happen.
Well, it's got numbers, it's got strength.
Especially when you got the fact that they've got 2 tough games to close out the season on the road that might not be winnable games for them. They need this win, actually.
Absolutely.
So they're not going to be overlooking you.
Yeah, Lobos are in a tough spot.
So I thought that was kind of weird when we were digesting all that yesterday on Bob's show, that this game actually means something for them. Otherwise, the talk at the beginning of the year, do you think they'll overlook UNM? Not in this case.
You know what? If they need a win to get bowl eligible, you're absolutely right. They won't. They will not.
Yeah, so it's going to be tough sledding here. We're going to step aside and take a break, and then we're going to go all over the high school football scene here, and we'll talk volleyball later on in the show as well. And you're watching the Sports Desk. First, the Dream Style Top 10 Plays of the Week.
Don't sacrifice quality of flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Hoops NM Basketball Center is coming soon. 10 full courts broken into 2 wings for ultimate basketball and volleyball play. Locker rooms, a lounge area, a pro shop, and a full snack bar will all be a part of a great experience. Convenient parking and access will make the Hoops NM Basketball Center a premier facility for league play and competitive regional tournaments. With over 9,000 square feet, Hoops NM Basketball Center will take court sports play to another level in our community. Courts are regulation high school size with wood floors and seating for approximately 350 per court. Major sponsors and supporters are being assembled now. If you're interested, contact Dan Serrano at 505-249-7994. Send him an email, hoopsnm@aol.com. That's hoopsnm@aol.com. Hoops NM Basketball Center, a premier sports facility serving our community.
Car Crafters, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Are you sure we're supposed to be doing this?
Don't worry, I've watched him do it 1,000 times. Come on, what's the worst that can happen?
No! Bad dog!
Hi, welcome to Car Crafters. What happened?
Don't worry, we'll make it like it never happened.
Car Crafters! It's like it never happened!
Duke City Sports Bar. Proud supporter of Proview Sports and New Mexico Youth Athletics. Catch all the sports action from high school, college, pros, and MMA on one of our 35 HD TVs. Start your night off right with any selection from our delicious menu prepared with fresh, never frozen ingredients. Duke City Sports Bar, Albuquerque's newest sports bar. Located on Eubank and Montgomery, dial 505-433-4020.
When I train for American Ninja Warrior, I schedule regular workouts to stay in shape.
To keep my car in Ninja Tough shape, I head to a Napa Auto Care Center for regular maintenance and genuine Napa Auto parts.
Like brakes and batteries.
I trust my Napa Auto Care Center for quality parts and quality service.
And with the 24-month, 24,000-mile nationwide warranty, I drive away with peace of mind every time.
Visit AutoCareNM.com to find a location near you.
And we are back here on the Sports Desk. I'm Scott Galletti along with Ed Nunez. Alden Ioane, our fine director. We are talking high school sports. Let's put a bow on the soccer season. The championship soccer was played out of Bernalillo this past weekend, Ed, and I'll tell you what, a lot of exciting games. They're always usually low scoring. The crowds are very intense and into it. It's a fun scene.
It always has been, you know, for years. I haven't been out to the complex. My nephew played soccer for El Dorado, so yeah, Jay Pohl was one of his teammates. That's why you're hearing the shout out from the back there. But you know, I always enjoyed my time out there because, like you mentioned, it's a great atmosphere. You got several fields going at once, and yeah, everybody's pretty excited and enthused about soccer here in the state of New Mexico. Their popularity has definitely been rising.
It really has, and I think the move to Bernalillo, and it was a beautiful day. A little bit windy, but nothing to speak of in terms of inclement weather. It wasn't like it was a year ago where they had the lightning delay and all that good stuff, the rain, the hail. This year was a perfect day, and I say that because the field was in outstanding shape.
You know.
All grass field. It was nice.
I'm thinking the New Mexico Activities Association does that, or I don't know who tends to that field.
I don't know who tends to that field, but it's a nice field.
Well,
both of them, the boys and the girls, all the fields there are really well tended to.
Whoever does deserves a lot of credit because you have a lot of traffic on the field, you know, rain, rocks, you know, so it takes a lot of wear and tear. So whoever tends to it deserves a lot of credit.
Let's take a look at some of the highlights now of these matches, and we'll start with the 4A girls. It was Sandia Prep 2-0 over Socorro. Jacqueline Rodriguez got the first goal of the game. That made it 1-0 for Sandia Prep. Then Ellie Cook would come up with this goal to make it 2-0, and that would be the end of the game. That coming in the 29th minute, and you see Sandia Prep hoisting the blue trophy. The next one was Academy and Los Alamos, and what a game this was. And
kick.
Ended up being a 1-0 game as Gabby Sanchez, unassisted, in the 50th minute, got the goal.
Oh, that's going down right to the wire there. Sure did.
Well, speaking of down to the wire, this was in overtime, and then you had an overtime goal by La Cueva, and that was Hannah Rivera from Deja Sandoval, and the celebration was on, the golden goal in overtime.
Well, look at this. I love to see that. That's the part I love to see the most is all that toil and sweating, all the practices pays off with the championship right there.
Now, I'll tell you what, it was a wild one on the boys' side as Hope Christian and Sandia Prep. What a game this was. 3-2 Hope Christian in overtime as Sam Morales would get the goal in the 45th minute for Hope Christian to make it 1-0. It was 1-1, then it was 2-1, and it would be a big goal to tie the game in the 80th minute by the Sandia Prep, as that was Hanrahan getting the goal, and then Sanchez would get the goal to win it. Kevin Sanchez would end up getting the game winner, and the celebration was on in that one. And then it was Academy in Alamogordo, and how about Alamogordo coming up? In fact, I was just finishing up doing the girls' game when the celebration for their first goal, and Alamogordo had a loud crowd.
I bet they did. They travel pretty well, and I'm glad to see the Tigers getting some state championship action here. We mentioned they'd struggled in football, but look at their soccer team's doing well.
And speaking of outstanding, #1 Albuquerque against #2 La Cueva, and a PK right there, and it was 2-2, and then on the PK there, it was Albuquerque winning, and they would end up winning the championship. And you know, quite a run. Albuquerque winning 3-2 in PKs, and wow, you can't ask for a better finish than that.
I think they've had some pretty good success the Bulldogs had in soccer, if I'm right.
Yes,
last
they
couple
have.
of years. So, it's funny that the program or school also, it's also the years has been known for boys basketball, but in the past couple of years, it's been known for boys soccer. They've done pretty well.
Let's take a look now at some of the brackets here and some of the action. We'll start with 2A 6-man playoffs. The schedule coming up, as that's coming up this weekend, and you see the championship game in 2A, Escalante at #1 Fort Sumner House. That's a 1 o'clock start, and Reserve at #1 Animas, and that will be the 6A championship game coming up.
I did the game last year at Fort Sumner, and boy, I tell you, that was a heck of an affair. Lordsburg against Fort Sumner, and beautiful day for football, just gorgeous. A little bit chilly at the end, and as the sun went down, but Fort Sumner came away victorious in that game. And the 6-man championship, I can't believe it's already that time for the championship. Reserve at Animas, that's going to be a good game as well.
Let's take a look at the 8-man playoffs, as it will be quarterfinal action coming up for 8-man. As you got games on Friday, Cloudcroft and Melrose, Dora Elida at #5 Tatum, Gateway Christian at Mountain Air, and then on Saturday at 1 o'clock, you got Mesilla Valley Christian School hosting Logan.
I remember doing a championship game at Melrose a couple years ago, the 8-man championship, and they won. And I remember the whole town being on the field. It seemed like, anyway. You know, you had the horses, the cows, the whole town, and that's community pride.
Right.
I'm not making fun at all. You know, that I still remember the bell was ringing, and you know what? Those kids will never forget that. And sometimes that's what for me anyway, even when I officiated in high school basketball, those small schools were just as much fun as a 6A game to me, because
I agree.
The town people really appreciate it when you showed up.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times when you went to school in 6A to call a game, you're lucky if you got a drink of water. If you went to a small school, not only were they happy to see you, they made sure you had water at the end when you left. They gave you food. They really took care of you. You didn't forget that. You never forgot that.
No,
so,
absolutely.
Melrose there, I remember being up there, and I can't tell you how friendly and hospitable the Melrose fans were when I was up there a couple years ago.
Now we get to go over some other stuff that came out with the selection seating show on Saturday. We'll start with 3A, and we'll look at the bracket right there. And then there you see Eunice at the top. We've talked about them all season long. Capitan at the bottom.
Eunice is 9-0, and you and I, Manny Lucero, give Manny Lucero, he sends the rankings to us every week. Manny does a lot of work, and I don't know if I gave him enough of a shout out on Saturday, so I apologize to my colleague and good friend because he really works hard on this. But Eunice, you and I have looked at the rankings. The team that kind of intrigued me a little bit is Estancia. They're still number 4. But Eunice at 9-0, I believe, or 10-0, they've held the number 1 ranking all year. But that could be good or that could be bad because teams are gunning for you now. They want to make sure they're the first team to give you that first, blip on your screen.
Speaking of first, let's look at the first 4 here. The top 4 teams: Eunice, Capitan, Santa Rosa, and Estancia. No surprises?
No, and you know what? Okay, Eunice and Estancia. Now, we mentioned Eunice is undefeated. Look at that game there. Take a close look at that game. Now, Eunice is 9-0, and Estancia, I believe, 6-4. So they're close to 500. But
now, don't get ahead of yourself. That's if this happens. So we'll go over the matchups here coming up. These are just the top 4 seeds.
I see. No,
that's
fault.
the potential matchup.
Okay.
If each team wins out, that's exactly what you'll have.
That
but
right
right now, it's not going to be Eunice Estancia. We'll get into that as we'll look at the schedule right now. And the schedule has the times here. Newcomb, Zuni, winner plays Eunice, and the list goes down. And you got a Saturday game with Raton hosting number 12 Cuba.
Cuba, the last team in. And we talked about that on Saturday. So I wonder if the Rams, going up, and you know this too. You've traveled and gone with teams. You have to be 10 points better on the road.
Exactly. At least. Yeah. And here's the thing. I want to give a shout out to the guys again. Our producer, director Jason Pohl, Alden Iowani, Josh Brown, doing a great job on the graphics. The only reason why I even bothered to put these graphics is because it shows the game times.
And you know what?
Their graphics are outstanding.
Their graphics, they're very creative too. I mean, they've worked and worked to be more creative, and they do such a great job here. And we can't thank them enough. But yeah, look at that, and that's great stuff there.
So let's say, well, speaking of great stuff, now we're going to go into the matchups, and this is where we're going to see Zuni and Newcomb. We're not very familiar with these lower teams, but this should be an outstanding matchup. 8 and 9s usually are.
Most, you know what? And if you're Newcomb, you come in and Zuni, and you kind of got a little chip, like we shouldn't be that low ranked. And yeah, so I think that's going to be an excellent matchup.
Let's take a look at the next game on the list here. You got number 5 Raton against Cuba. You were just talking about Cuba being the last team in.
And they got to travel to Raton, and that's quite a trip to Raton for Cuba. So we'll see how the Rams fare, and they're, like you mentioned, the last team in.
Third of the 4 games that we have here is we'll take a look at Tularosa hosting Tucumcari.
Tucumcari, I know one of the last teams also in. They've kind of struggled this year, so we'll see how they fare against Tularosa.
And the last one on the matchups coming up for this week for 3A, you got Dexter playing host to Texaco. That should be a good one.
These 2 teams probably know each other very well. They're, I think, in the same geographical region, so that should be a good game as well.
Let's take a look now at the 4A bracket, as we'll do the same thing here. We'll go over the bracket, we'll go over the top 4, the schedule, and then the matchups, as you got St. Mike's, the number 1 seed, Portales, number 2.
St. Mike's hasn't lost since September. Portales trending upward towards the end of the year, including a big victory against Moriarty, a hard-fought victory, by the way, 2 weeks ago, 13-7 against the Pintos. So the Rams, the defending state champions in this class, will definitely be a force to be reckoned with before it's all said and done.
Take a look now at the top 4 again, this time in 4A, and you see St. Mike's, Portales, and then you got Robertson, number 3. Ruidoso is number 4. I look at Robertson, number 3, as being a very, very dangerous team.
R.J. Ortiz, we mentioned him on Saturdays. Pass for over 1,000, run for over 1,000. Defense has 20 sacks, 14 interceptions. Look at the Warriors of Ruidoso. They beat Moriarty on Friday night, 39-31.
Talk about a team that's trending upward.
Ruidoso. Yeah, that's another team that, we talked about sleepers. My sleeper, and yours was too, was Las Vegas Robertson, but look at Ruidoso.
Yeah. They started off, and you and I talked about this in the earlier weeks of the season, Ed, here on the show, where Ruidoso was struggling a little bit. They got their direction going in the right way, and all of a sudden they're trending very, very upward, and they're a number 4 seed.
They beat a very good Moriarty team, 39-31. And if you're the Warriors coming into the tournament or the playoffs, you have to feel pretty good about getting a 4 seed. I would. And we talk about about trends, Scott, they're definitely trending up.
Well, you mentioned that Moriarty game, and we kind of called that their signature win of the season, and indeed it was.
And we'll talk about the Pinos in a minute, but Ruidoso definitely on the way up.
Let's take a look now at the schedule with the times. We got a couple of games on Friday, a couple on Saturday. Moriarty hosting Socorro, Hope Christian at number 7 Taos. That's Friday, both games at 7 o'clock. The West Las Vegas Silver game is at noon on Saturday. Shiprock, number 9, at Hatch Valley at 1 o'clock on Saturday.
We mentioned Shiprock towards the end of the year. They've won their last 4 games by large margins, again, against not the best competition, but if you're talking about a team that's kind of trending towards the end of the year, they're trending up. So they have to travel to Hatch Valley, and that's a daunting task for just about anybody, but we'll see, as I mentioned, trends. Shiprock has to feel pretty good about their last 4 games of the season.
And a little bit of a closer look at the matchups now, as you got all these matchups. Hatch Valley, the game that you were just talking about against Shiprock, Ed.
Yeah, and then we mentioned that. We'll see what with Shiprock again. We mentioned traveling on the road is a lot different.
Next one on the list here, you got number 5 Moriarty against Socorro.
I wonder about the Pintos. They've lost their last 2. What does that do for their mojo, for their confidence? I still think, again, they cost themselves a top 4 seed by losing to Ruidoso on Friday night. So I wonder about them, but they're still a very good team and well coached, and they should get past this first round matchup.
They should, but Socorro is another team that we've talked about and looking at some of their scores in the past as a very positive team.
No doubt. And when you know what the thing is, when you get in, you never know what's going to happen. You never know.
Let's take a look at the next matchup, and this one will be West Las Vegas and Silver. Again, should be a West Las Vegas victory, as West Las Vegas has had an outstanding season, and they're going to be at home for a day game.
That's right, and they Dons bring them in. They bring the fans in there, and Richard Tripp really couldn't pick this one or pick anything in this class. He's the West Las Vegas athletic director, so we'll have to see.
And the final one here in 4A, and you got Taos and Hope Christian. Hope Christian, one of those teams that's kind of a tweener all season long, where you think they're on the cusp of doing something really special, then they have a setback, then they get better again. You don't know really what to expect, but, and Taos kind of in the same boat.
Well, Hope Christian, coached by Gary Beck, and Taos by Art Abreu. Taos beat them earlier in the year. Taos beat them. Yeah. So the Huskies are hoping for a payback. And the Taos Tigers can't take the Huskies lightly, because you have a tendency to think that as kids, and they do. When you've beaten an opponent already, you're kind of like, well, you got to beat them, and you can't help it. That's why they're kids. Right. They're already kind of saying, well, we'll just, who are we going to play next? So the Tigers would be, to keep their eyes on the prize, and that's right for this week. It's the Hope Christian Huskies.
Yeah, it's a very good point. We will look at 5A and 6A out of the break. You're watching the Sports Desk.
Carmody Medical provides solutions for your everyday needs. Hot and cold compression wraps provide therapeutic compression for the shoulder, hip, and knee. The therapy wraps are constructed of an insulated outer fabric and a ventilated cotton pocket to protect the body. Elastic belts allow mobility and deliver a gentle, adjustable compression. The reusable therapy packs can be removed from the pouch and placed into the freezer. Contact Jim for more information.
VR Junkies is a virtual reality arcade. We specialize in all things VR, from the simple phone-based headsets to cutting-edge full-body motion systems. Check us out at the Coronado Mall. VR Junkies.
Car Crafters, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Are you sure we're supposed to be doing this?
Don't worry, I've watched him do it 1,000 times. Come on, what's the worst that can happen?
No! Bad dog!
Hi, welcome to Car Crafters. What happened?
Don't worry, we'll make it like it never happened.
Car Crafters! It's like it never happened!
Sadie's is a proud supporter of New Mexico high school sports and athletics, and we here at Proview Networks would like to thank Sadie's for their continued support in helping us bring you all of your New Mexico high school sports coverage.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walking to the cashier, order up a root beer and a number 1. Cover it with green stuff, 1 scoop is not enough. Find a booth is real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot. It's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Hey everyone, Adam Deal here with Proview Networks. Extreme Clean is a proud sponsor and supporter of Proview Networks and all high school sports athletics. Owner Mike McLean and Extreme Clean specialize in carpet cleaning for apartment, realty, business, and residential clients. With over 20 years experience, attention to detail and quality customer service matters. For more information, give them a call, 505-221-6440, Extreme Clean.
Don't sacrifice quality of flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of Proview Sports.
Folks, there's no other way but to be all in. Either he's Lord of all or he is not Lord at all. And you can experience the real and authentic, true life change that only God can provide to humanity. See, when we truly encounter Jesus and purpose to know him and follow his teachings, # life change will occur.
Sports Desk is proudly presented by Car Crafters. It's like it never happened.
And we're back here on the Sports Desk. Scott Colletti along with Ed Nunez, Alden Ioane, our fine director. We're going to move now forward on the high school scene, football-wise, to 5A. Ed, is a lot of good things going on in both 5 and 6A, and we'll get right to that.
You know, Sebastian Noel covered that on Saturday, and I had the opportunity and the honor to call Belen Las Lunas, so this is going to be a very interesting bracket as well.
Well, before we go forward with the brackets and everything, let's talk about that Los Lunas Belen game. As I should have had the highlights. That was my bad for not putting those highlights on, because that was an outstanding game, but it deserves talking about because it was a game for district.
You know, Roger Holian and I said this, mano-a-mano battle that went right down literally to the last second. And Nick Garland, the Las Lunas quarterback, they rolled a moving pocket a lot because Rowdy Robinson, the linebacker from Belen, had 18 sacks going in the game. Rowdy Robinson, I talked to Coach Greg Hennington on Friday, and he mentioned that Rowdy Robinson is one of their fastest kids who plays offensive guard and linebacker. And I'm like, one of your and he gets some carries as a running back. He volunteered to move to guard. And when I heard that, I'm like, wow. And then Rowdy Robinson, the name fits, but they kept him under check. So with the moving pocket, rolling to his left, Garland had a big game. He really did. And then there's the highlights.
Oh, there we do have highlights. Thank you, Alden, on that. Why don't you walk us through?
Luna scoring through for Las Lunas, and this is Garland. Beautiful pass down the right sideline for a touchdown, and one-on-one coverage there that Garland saw right off the snap. And here's Hallstrom and he sees one-on-one coverage, and look how far behind that the receiver is behind the Las Lunas defender. This is the way it went all game long, Scott. There's Garland looking, and he gets up the middle for a touchdown. An outstanding quarterback, also the punter for Las Lunas, so you never know. Diego Casillas was our Cool Springs trampoline park. Look at this. Diego Casillas reminds me of Mike Allstott, Larry Zonka punishes you at the end of the game.
You know, watching that run, that brings back memories.
You don't even want to. You don't want to hit him. You don't. This is another beautiful play by Garland. Has a receiver wide open, and as we mentioned, just a battle back and forth. Here's Casillas again. He started wearing the defense down. They did a good job on him. He's over 100. He probably had about 145, 150 yards for the day. And there's Garland on the quarterback read. And look at this move. Look at that. Oh, my goodness. How many tackles did he avoid there? And even the guys in the back are impressed. They're impressed. And here's the extra point. I felt bad for Evan Tafoya, the Las Lunas kicker. I felt really bad for him. You know, then Belen goes down the field, and there's Casillas' 4 touchdowns. Look at this. this kid's a bruising back, man. I wouldn't want to hit him. And then Los Lunas, last drive, there's a sack there, and that was it for Los Lunas in their final. But here's the thing. I want to go back to this, and I told you this, and you and I talked about this on Saturday. Los Lunas had a 4th down, and they got the conversion, 4th down, holding. So made it 4th and 23 at midfield. 4th and 23. I told Roger Holian, you got to kick. You got to kick. They go to the line quick, empty backfield. They hit Alexis Aguilar, who makes a great catch, the Berlin tight end, at the Los Lunas 21st down, 4th and 23. Roger, and I told Roger, I said, I can't believe that. I can't believe it. If you convert 4th and 23, and you know what? Coach Henningsen from Berlin, it's not conventional. People would say, Coach, what were you thinking? But if you make it, it's like, Coach, what a great call, what a great call. If you don't, after the game, the press barbecues you, the whole town is like, what are you doing? It was almost like Hoosiers, because Berlin is small,
That's
but
true.
I'll give Coach Greg Henningsen a lot of credit, because that was a gutsy call. And you should have seen the catch by Aguilar at the 20, high-pointed it. That is
outstanding.
So again, that game had all the elements that you want, everything, ups and downs, lead changes. And again, it's for the district championship. And I think it had Los Lunas won. Okay, and Roger and I said this. Remember, they had the psychological edge because they eliminated Berlin last year in last year's playoffs. So if Los Lunas wins, is there a psychological edge beating them twice? And you'd have to think about that. And maybe there would have been, but it came down to the last second. I felt worse for Evan Tafoya, the kicker from Los Lunas, because it's not. You just can't put that on him. You can't.
No.
And just I'll tell you, I've done a lot of games for Proview Networks. That's one of the best games I've ever seen, honestly. Football, basketball, baseball, whatever game I've been in, that was a great game.
Let's take a look now. As you'll look right there, let's stick with where that is. As we got the 5A bracket, and you got Artesia on top, Berlin at the bottom. Even though Berlin went undefeated, and they're saying, hey, how about us? I think they got it right.
You know what? 29 state championships for the Bulldogs.
Well, you also got to look at who they lost to. They lost to 2 6A teams.
Cleveland?
They didn't lose to Cleveland and Hobbs.
That's right. And Hobbs, you mentioned the quarterback.
Cleveland and Hobbs were the only teams that they lost to. They didn't lose to a 5A team, so you got to give it to them.
Los Lunas played them tough. They did play them tough.
They did.
But you know what? I have no argument with Artesia being at the top.
And let's take a look now at the schedule. As we'll do what we did before, we'll take a look at I'm sorry. We'll take a look at the top 4 teams right now. As you see, Farmington number 4, Roswell number 3.
We talk about teams that are trendy. Look at the Scorpions from Farmington. They've definitely had a good latter part of the year, and they deserve that number 4 seed that they got. I like Berlin a lot. I really do. And I know Taylor Knoll, the Artesia quarterback, has put up some phenomenal numbers throughout the year. But Berlin plays with a mojo and a swag. They really do. We'll see. I know you like the Bulldogs, and that's not a bad pick either. They've been there. They have that championship swag, that aura, that championship cool. They know what to do once they get there. But something about those Eagles just really intrigues me.
Right. Let's take a look now at the schedule, and you got 2 games on Friday, 2 on Saturday. Miyamura, who has dropped a couple of games, they're hosting Deming. Capital against Los Lunas.
You know what? Capital was looking pretty decent at the beginning of the year. They dropped some, and you mentioned the Patriots for Miyamura. They were 8-0 at one point, and I guess they've dropped again. We talk about trending, and you don't want to be trending downward towards the end of the year, but both the Patriots and the Jaguars, Capital, have had good seasons.
How about the game at the bottom? 2 o'clock at Community Stadium on Saturday. St. Pius taking on Lovington.
I believe Pius beat them earlier in the year, if I'm not mistaken. I thought Pius went down to Lovington and beat them. So this is a chance for the Wildcats to return the favor. And Pius was playing pretty well till they ran into that Eagle machine. And we'll see what happens.
And there you see the Pius Lovington game right there. Is Pavia, the quarterback, he's the wild card in any game that they play.
Well, James Yotis called him one of the finest sophomores in the state. And when James Yotis says something like that, he's been covering high school football for 25, 30 years, and he says that.
Well, when I saw him the one game that I did for St. Pius, he passed the eye test.
Yeah, and you've been out there, and you know quality football players. Now, we're not going to sit there and go overboard and say he's another Drew Ortiz, but if he's the kid is looking pretty solid.
And being a guy who saw Drew Ortiz quite a bit when he was a freshman, I would say I wouldn't put him up at the same level, but he's got the ssame potential.
That's saying a lot. We know Drew Ortiz and his group last year won the 2016 state championship for Pius, so give Pavia two more years.
Different kind of quarterback because he runs a little more, although Ortiz ran also, but Ortiz was known for that gun of an arm.
Yeah, Ortiz, again, he had some good receivers to go with that, but they really didn't have, if you think about it last year, the Pius didn't have that scat back, that explosiveness. The scat back and the explosiveness came from Drew Ortiz running for 80 yards.
Right.
That was the explosiveness.
Let's take a look at the next games coming up. You got Los Lunas Capital, and again, Los Lunas, they're number 5. I think they wanted to be in that top 4, getting that bye, obviously, and they're going to be hungry.
There's got to be a little bit, again, I call it an emotional hangover, the hangover or without the alcohol, a 2-day hangover when you lose a game like that. But you know what?
I think when you get to the playoffs, I think that hangover turns into anger.
I think so, too.
And I got a feeling, the talent that this team has, I think they're going to be refocused.
You know what? I don't doubt that. And plus, I had a chance to talk to Los Lunas coach Jeremy Maupin, who came from Artesia. Mm-hmm. He knows about winning. He knows about preparation. I can't tell you how impressed I was with him and Greg Henningsen, the head coach of Berlin. Let me tell you, these guys were accessible, informative. They never said, hey, I don't have time to talk. They called me. After I left them a message, they both called back, and they both gave me 15 minutes, 20 minutes of their time. I couldn't think, and again, when you're talking about kids and you're talking about football players, they're developing young men beyond football. I could tell. So Jeremy Maupin, I was very impressed with him, and I think you're right. And Scott, when you're angry, you've played. I used to go out there. Sometimes I was so mad I wasn't focused on what I needed to do because I was just looking for revenge. Right. And sometimes you have to have that controlled anger. So I think Los Lunas, as you mentioned, has a great coach and a great program. They'll be ready for this matchup.
Let's keep looking forward now. You got Aztec against Goddard, and this should be a very good game.
Aztec, another team, trending up. We talked about trends, and towards the end of the year, they've played some good football.
And Goddard you never know about because this has always been a good program.
Especially playoff time.
Mm-hmm.
That's a team that you can't count out.
Exactly. That's why I look at this game and I think, I don't know if I would count Goddard out of this game, although Aztec is pretty doggone good.
Yes, they are.
Let's look at the final game here is Miyamura against Deming. And Miyamura, another team, should be hungry in the playoffs, but Deming, one of those teams that a lot of people don't know about.
No, you're right.
There's a lot of people here in the Albuquerque area.
You're right. They've kind of flown under the radar. And Miyamura started out, I believe, 8-0. Has dropped a couple of games towards the end of the year, but the Patriots certainly had a good first part of the year.
Moving ahead now as we will go to our next slide, and that will be the 6A. And you got Manzano on the top, La Cueva on the bottom, number 1 and number 2.
That's where they belong. Duke City Gladiator coach Dominic Bramante on Saturday said all roads go through Manzano. The only team that can beat Manzano is Manzano.
Yeah.
I heard former St. Pius head coach San Juan Mendoza say that Manzano has the best offensive line or the best defensive line and one of the best offensive lines. We say this before. If you can control the line of scrimmage, which the Monarchs have done all year, and then you have explosive playmakers like Jordan Bird, Andrew Erickson, Xavier Ivory Sod, and then Keon Pringle has gotten into the act in the last 3 games. Alejandro Vallejos, the linebacker, is hurt. Also the scat back. Is he going to be ready for the playoffs? Again, can they win without him? Probably. But you like to have all your pieces there. This is a team that's a very, very special team. The first undefeated team in 50 years at Manzano. Very special team.
We'll look at the matchups, and we'll get into those here shortly. But you got the top 4 right here. You got Manzano, La Cueva, we just mentioned. Cleveland, number 3. Las Cruces, number 4. The worst part, and I said this on the selection seating show about this, to me, is the Manzano-Las Cruces matchup, if it should come to pass, would be in the semifinals, not the championship game.
At Field of Dreams.
That too.
So
I'm still trying to find out
who owes who, right?
Has a list of who owes who.
Okay,
but I haven't.
You mentioned that the other day.
Haven't gotten an answer to that.
Who came up with that?
I've never heard of that until coming to New Mexico. What they do it in California, and I didn't like that either. You got the top seed, and then they flip a coin. After the first round, it would all be coin flips, and the team that won the coin flip would host the game. Where here, who owes who? It's like, the two schools could have played in 1956, and that determines who's home this week. Or this year.
When you mentioned
that doesn't make sense to me. I mean, to me, it should be, if you get the number 1 seed, you should be the home team throughout. No questions, no ands, ifs, or buts. You earn that number 1 seed. And I've seen it many times, especially in Southern California, although most of those games are at the Coliseum or at Anaheim Angel Stadium or whatever, so they're at a neutral site. But on the lower levels in Southern California, the host school will be determined by a coin flip, and I'm totally against that too.
Man, the Coliseum, think about that high school game at the Coliseum, wow.
And here's some of the matchups here, and Atrisco Heritage against Clovis. And that will be on Friday at 7, along with Centennial Rio Rancho. You got Piedra Vista, who made it into the playoffs as the number 11 seed. They're against Hobbs, who is number 6, and West Mesa taking on number 7, El Dorado. Let's take a look. We'll talk about these games in depth now. Atrisco against Clovis, both running teams. This game should be over in about an hour and 15 minutes.
You mentioned you kind of like Clovis, and they did have.
I do, because of physical matchups, and yes, Atrisco is a physical team. They can go toe to toe with a lot of teams, but after seeing what I saw earlier in the year when Clovis went mano a mano against Rio Rancho and almost beat them on their home field, yeah, La Cueva proving that they're probably better than Rio Rancho because they shut out Clovis last week. But and got to remember, Clovis also has a different quarterback at this juncture of the year than they did at the beginning of the year because their original starter got down to injury, and then the secondary quarterback was doing a good job. But you know, La Cueva was able to shut down Demarius Milton. I don't know if Atrisco can do that.
Well, you know, they've got Alvidrez, they've got Angel Ramirez. Now, if that triple option is working well, that could cause problems for Clovis, who has to definitely play gap defense and play disciplined defense. When that triple option is going well, it's hard to stop.
So is Clovis's running game, which is going to be the fun part about this, because it's going to be one team against another trying to instill their will, because they both run and run very effectively on the ground, but in two completely different ways. Where Clovis, pretty much a straight handoff team, or you know, they might do a little option where you got Atrisco, they're the option team.
Right, they come with, you know, the dive, the pitch, the quarterback read. They come at you with a whole bunch of different defensive things. But you know what? I think when
over under on passes in this game.
Let's say what?
8?
8 to 10 combined.
8 to 10 combined. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking too. I mean, you know, when these two teams are rolling, they don't need to pass.
No, they don't.
And the clock keeps rolling, so I anticipate a very, very quick game, and it's going to be a toss-up. This one, I don't know if this is going to be a toss-up. Rio Rancho should have Centennial's number. It's a down Centennial team, but you never know.
They're down to their third-string quarterback, I believe. I think I read that in the paper, and James Yotis was saying that he kind of gave Centennial a little bit of a chance. I was kind of surprised about that. Centennial's had a lot of injuries, not used to the mark of excellence that they usually come with. Centennial's a very good team.
So we'll see what happens in this one, and it's going to be a pivotal one because Rio Rancho wants to regain their championship from last year. Piedra Vista against Hobbs. Piedra Vista kind of a feel-good story, but I think Hobbs, you know, when I saw the numbers of their quarterback, I was astounded. He's thrown for over 4,000 yards and only has 8 picks on the year. That's amazing.
4,000 yards. When you said that on Saturday, I couldn't believe that either. That was unbelievable. And yeah, so you know what? That's Steve Davis. That's one of his dark horses, as well as the Hobbs Eagles. And when you're talking about a quarterback that can make plays like that and pass for 4,000 yards, you really have to take a look at the Eagles.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to say that looking on paper to take the Eagles, but that's why they play the games on the field.
That's right.
Let's take a look at the next one, and the next one will show us El Dorado and West Mesa. And this is another one that I think that comes down to matchups. Ed, is West Mesa another feel-good story. They were the second team out of District 4 to get in, whereas at the beginning of the season, no one anticipated more than one. So that's good for them. They're facing El Dorado, a team that's a little bit ticked off, and they've gone through their injuries also, but I think El Dorado too physical and too much firepower for West Mesa.
Gabe Smith, the quarterback, that's the key there. They've got some good running backs in Resma Troy and Richard Gallegos, and the other guy that you kind of like is Colin Bars. the wide receiver and Javian Chavez. But I'll tell you one thing. Is the quarterback Ramirez for West Mesa, can he go? He came off the field in their last game. And
that's a huge question. If he doesn't go,
if he's hurt, that's a whole different thing.
A lot
different thing. So they've got players that I really like, Paul Salazar, Mark Garcia. They've got some playmakers themselves, the underused Brandon Bolden. So you're right, El Dorado should come away with a victory on that.
But when you go back to Colin Bars, you got a young man who they run that quick hitter over the middle.
Slant.
And usually, if the defense plays it right, it's a 10, 15-yard game, but they are masters, they being El Dorado, with their receivers to break those for big-time touchdowns.
Big, tall, lanky receivers as well.
We will take a break here. One more segment on the Sports Desk coming up here on Comcast 26 ProView Networks.
Car Crafters, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Are you sure we're supposed to be doing this?
Don't worry, I've watched him do it 1,000 times. Come on, what's the worst that can happen?
No! Bad dog!
Hi, welcome to Car Crafters. What happened?
Don't worry, we'll make it like it never happened.
Car Crafters! It's like it never happened!
When I train for American Ninja Warrior, I schedule regular workouts to stay in shape.
To keep my car in Ninja Tough shape, I head to a Napa Auto Care Center for regular maintenance and genuine Napa Auto parts. Like brakes and batteries. I trust my Napa Auto Care Center for quality parts and quality service.
And with the 24-month, 24,000-mile nationwide warranty, I drive away with peace of mind every time.
Visit AutoCareNM.com to find a location near you.
And we're back here on the Sports Desk. You look at the volleyball state playoff bracket. You got Sandia Prep, Silver, and Cobre. That's Pool A. They do it in pool play. And we'll go to Pool B now. Robertson, Hope, and Hatch Valley. And next pool coming up in 4A is C with Portales, Santa Fe Indian, and Bosque. And Pool D, St. Mike's, Moriarty, and Shiprock. Kind of a unique way that they do it here.
Yes, here we go. Volleyball finals and semifinals this week.
Let's go now to 5A. And again, pool play, Pool A, St. Pius #1. They've been #1 all season.
And going back to last season too, right? I mean, it seems like they've been #1.
Seems like they're always #1.
In volleyball, they've had some good success the last couple of years.
Yes, they have. Let's go to Pool B, and you got Artesia #2, Roswell, and Bloomfield. And Pool C finds Los Lunas, Academy, and Capital.
Again, those teams all bunched up there together. We'll have to see what happens.
Pool D has Farmington, Santa Teresa, and Goddard.
Yeah, the seating and selection show was the other night with Sebastian Noel and Adam Deal. They did the volleyball seating and selection, so here we go.
Let's go to 6A, and in 6A you got Centennial #1, followed by Rio Rancho and Atrisco.
Rio Rancho, coached by Toby Manzanares. He's got himself a couple of state titles. They're always a team to keep an eye on. Coach Manzanares knows how to win, and he's got his girls ready, I'm sure.
Let's take a look at Pool B. You got La Cueva and Cleveland and Cibola.
La Cueva's they've been at the top or near the top in 6A for at least 3 or 4 years now.
Yes, they have. So they're going to be a hard team to beat. Pool C, and that will be Sandia, Volcano Vista, and Piedra Vista. And then you got Pool D, El Dorado, Las Cruces, and Clovis. Now, what we didn't tell you is they reseed at the end of pool play.
Oh.
Which is kind of unique.
And yes. Never heard of that. That's very unique.
Yeah. Well, where I come from, they had like a traditional volleyball playoff, as we're in our final minute, where teams would battle up until the semifinals and finals at a neutral site and kind of battle it out that way. But because of travel and teams coming from all over the state, you can't do that here.
No, and I always am interested in hearing how they do things other places. It's interesting to hear. It really
Well,
is.
the travel's not as immense as it is here. I mean, you're talking maybe a 20-minute bus ride at the most, as opposed to 2-3 hours, depending on what school.
Sometimes that's fun to go 2 or 3 hours. It really is. You know, you kind of bond with the team.
Well, That will do it for us here. You've got boxing this week. That ought to be fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
He's Ed Nunez. I'm Scott Coletti. Our thanks to Alden Iowani, our director and producer, for getting the show on the air. And we will talk to you next week on the Sports Desk.